everybody, and welcome to the Law Unscripted, where we discuss all the things about the law and the legal system that you never knew,
never understood,
and no one ever told you. Up today, we are going to talk for law students about what to do the week of the bar examination. What do you do? What do you do that week? What do you do during the test? What do you do immediately after the test? What do you want to do and prepare for the week that you are taking the bar exam? We did one that talked about everything you need to do beforehand within a month before the exam. So catch that one on our channel. Today is what to do during the week of the exam. We're also going to do one that's what not to do during the week of the exam, which I think will be pretty humorous. And then we're going to do another of what to do after the exam is done, and there's nothing more you can do to study or prepare for the exam itself. I'm Virginia Tarani. I am the CEO of The Law Unscripted and the owner of Tarani Law, LLC. Chelsea is my colleague and partner both on the Law Office and The Law Unscripted. You can catch us on thelawunscripted.com. We have this podcast, we have the Legal Weekly Wine, and we have bar prep materials. Chelsea went through it last year. You will learn from me, a full-time practicing attorney, and Chelsea, who is practicing for the bar exam, as we walk through the 8 core subjects of the bar exam. It's a supplemental material. Take as little or as much as you need for all 8 subjects. One subject at a time, one piece at a time, whatever you need, it is there. And Chelsea, it worked for you.
It did. I think that you're an invaluable resource in my bar prep. And so I'm really happy that other people have the opportunity to see that. And, it's live. You can see my, real life fear through it. I was prepping for the bar exam, and I think that, it'll at least make you feel better. But no, you can see how I thought through things and how we had conversations about a lot of the questions of like, what am I missing? I know I'm missing something. What am I missing? And I think that those discussions have a lot of value in them.
Yeah. And I think it was really a unique experience because for everyone who uses our materials, this is someone who is in your position. Chelsea was taking it live. These are her real-time thoughts, her reactions, the questions that she was struggling with. So this wasn't, what do we think people want to know? This was really, what do people need to know? And what do they have trouble with? What are they hoping to get help for? And that's why we're using these videos to say, okay, that's the study material. But realistically, in life, nobody really tells you what to do for the exam. And you can find a couple of threads out there, and there's always something on Pinterest. But we wanted to throw our hat in that ring as successful people who have taken and passed the bar and who are now practicing. What do we think are the ways and the means for you to set up your bar exam to be the most successful or most possibly successful time period that you can? So today we're going to talk about setting expectations for your friends and for the test. We're going to talk about pre-planning your food and activities, as well as planning rest and relaxation time, because we believe that all of these 3 things are necessary. They sound a little bit intuitive, but stay with us as we talk through, because not all of them are, and some of this may surprise you. Okay, Chelsea, let's start with planning and setting your expectations. Now, we've got a twofold, your own expectations and those of your family and friends. Talk to us about what you had to do.
So this is so funny. And I'm a pretty, especially with my friends and close family, like I am just going to say it how it is. And I'd seen horror stories on Twitter about people whose family and friends harassed them for no end about not contacting them enough during the week of the bar exam, and then while they were waiting for results to then question them about it all the time. So like before I went into that test, I was like, if you do not hear from me, that is not, even to my mom. And I mean, I talk to my mom no less than 50,000 times a day on the phone. And I was like, hey, I'll call you if I want to talk. If I don't, you have my location, and I might not be able to engage with that. And I need you to understand that going in. And same thing about asking about how I felt like it went, or, if any of my thoughts. I was like, don't ask. I just flat out said it to everybody. I was like, do not ask me about it.
Yeah.
If I want to talk about it, I'll bring it up, because I didn't want to then go into the exam stressing about if I felt like I did a really bad section or I was really upset about something, I didn't also want to have the pressure of like needing and having to communicate with somebody about that.
Exactly. And that was the same for me. Is I text a lot more now than I did when I originally took, the Virginia bar exam in 2005. But even then, I was in fairly constant communication with certain people, and it was better just to put a Facebook post out there of, I will be taking the bar examination this week. Do not contact me. I will contact you if I need something. If you have something really, really super important, save it. If someone dies, honestly, I told, I think it was my mom, I was like, if somebody dies, don't tell me until afterwards.
Right.
And she's like, well, don't you want to know? No, not during these 2 days. I need you not to tell me, and don't tell me beforehand. Now, if the funeral happens to be during the bar and I want to have an idea or an option to go or not, then that's one thing. But seriously, it sounds crazy, but it's like, do not tell me anything bad. Save it. Don't tell me someone's sick. Don't tell me nothing. I don't want to hear it because I need to be focusing. And it sounds heartless, but it wasn't, because there's so many things already to distract you that you want to be able to say, look, I'm not a horrible person. I need this week to myself. So don't call, don't text. I will contact you if I need you. Otherwise, you can leave me a comment on Facebook that says, way to go, we love you, we're praying for you, we wish you luck, whatever, but I'm not going to look at it. And you need to tell people, like you did, tell them ahead of time so it's not a surprise.
Yeah, I did that. And for me too, because a lot of my social media were other people who were taking the bar exam, or just, like people on Twitter that a lot of the stuff I follow is related to the legal field. I personally, for the 2 days of the exam, deactivated all of my accounts, because it's what we do in the world we live in. You go to decompress and go to scroll on your phone. And I was terrified that I was going to do that, just not thinking, and see something that would then send me into a panic. So for those 2 days, I just deactivated everything because I didn't want to see anything inadvertently that would cause me to stress, because I went out of my way not to discuss like the exam questions or anything. Especially to me, this is most importantly between day 1 and 2.
Yeah.
I'm like, after it's over, whatever, talk about it. But for me, I was really concerned that I didn't want to, anything to mess up my good vibes in between the 2 days.
Yeah.
And so I just took the precautions that I wasn't going to accidentally see something.
And I think that was really smart. And like you're saying, I think the biggest point you're making is social media is a pastime now. And how many hours your screen time pops up each Sunday or whatever it is for each of you is you've used this much time per day. Well, especially for a bar when we're stressed, is you're going to want to go back to the behaviors that make you normally rest and relax and randomly think. But if you're on TikTok and you're seeing all these other students stress out or cry or worry, that's impactful. So decide ahead of time for that week if, we're going to talk about things you don't do, you shouldn't do. And that's a big part of it. Yeah. But for the positive piece of what you should do is, I think, deciding ahead of time not to engage in social media or to deactivate it as much as, that seemed to help you, is to go to that extra step so that you won't be disturbed. We're working
or tempted, because I know myself.
Right. Is it's, how easy is it to do that? And it really is I want to be looking at, cute dogs on TikTok, but all of a sudden something else pops up. Exactly. It's really hard to limit it to cute dogs unless you just do a search, right? You're not just doing your own channels. So decide ahead of time, set your own expectations as to what would mess you up, and set expectations for others so that they're not surprised or offended even. We're working on a sign, and we're trying to get the sign done, but we're trying to get it, and hopefully it'll be offered by the time that you see this video. But it's something to the effect of, I'm taking the bar unless you have a search warrant or coffee, do not disturb. So we're working on one like that, but it's true, right? Is you want to set any kind of disturbances to something that is absolutely unnecessary. The police are coming in, or, you just don't want that extra. So make sure for yourself, you're setting your expectations. Make sure for others, they know ahead of time so nobody panics. Some people, I've heard of their parents showing up to the exam because they hadn't heard from them and there was no pre-planning, no preset of expectations. And their parents are like, oh my God, are you dead? How horrible would that be? You don't want that happening.
No.
Not everybody goes to that extreme, but there are these stories. I know of this happening to people. So tell people ahead of time. Don't spring it on them. Make sure people know what days they are. Make sure that they're respecting you. And you're also respecting the same expectations, where if somebody else is saying, look, please don't talk to me, even if they're in the same exam room, if they've asked you that, be polite and respectful and say, okay, that's not what I need, but that's what they need too.
And I'll say I got very lucky that a couple girls from my law school study group were taking the exam at the same time, same place. Not surprising, but we all kind of function a little bit differently. And we had our little group chat of like, if anyone wants company for lunch, this is where I am. You're welcome to come sit with me. I'm not going to be talking about the exam. But I personally... this is so funny because you know how I am about my vibes. The vibes in that conference center were like, I could feel the stress radiating off of anyone. I was like, I will not be eating my lunch in this environment. Thank you so much for the invite. But I think our group was really good of that. If you want company, I'm here. If you don't, not a big deal. And like respecting other people's choices. Like a couple of girls ate lunch together. I did not because that was just not my vibe.
But you set it up beforehand. You knew yourself well enough and you prepared for it. And I think that's the biggest thing we're trying to make sure to offer is to be prepared. Set it up ahead of time. And that's the same with the activities. As you're saying, okay, this is how we prepared lunches. It's the same thing. Plan your food and activities ahead of time. Right. Find the restaurants, find the 7-Elevens like you did. Find the places that are close enough. And where you think, okay, this is where I have enough time to eat lunch. Don't be planning a 4-course meal at lunchtime during the bar. It's not going to work. You will be late or you will be, you will get bloated or whatever. Don't do it.
But that is real. I chose to not eat what I think would be a normal lunch for me. I was like, I'm going to eat more of a light lunch situation because I didn't want to like get the post. That's what I was worried about of like the afternoon being like sluggish because I decided to eat a foot long, right? Like which I devoured to be clear after the exam. But I was like more like, I don't want to sit there and have food on my stomach. Like I was very particular about what I was going to eat for lunch. And they were mostly things I packed and brought with me. And then I went into a food coma after the exam, like immediately went from the exam to the Jimmy John's to get, food and just enjoy that. But I was so particular about it.
And you also pre-plan for you. And this is the whole self-awareness. If you get a 3 p.m. slump, you're going to have to do the exam 1 to 5 generally, right? These are the normal hours. So make sure what you're eating at lunch doesn't cause that sugar drop or the sluggishness. If you can bring in a Monster or a Celsius or something like that, do you want to? Or does it negatively impact you? Figure it out beforehand. Bring snacks. Whether you can bring them into the bar, find out beforehand. What you bring in. You don't want to be snacking on chips right in the middle of the bar. Most bars won't let you take in snacks during the exam.
I don't think ours did.
But if you have them, make sure they're available for you, where if you don't want to go find a restaurant for lunch, you don't want to stand in a line with the other 1,000 people taking the exam at the same place at the same time, pack something in your bag. Pre-pack a sandwich, pre-pack, some kind of snack, some kind of peanut butter crackers, whatever it is that will be filling enough, but not too filling or not, too full, doesn't make you too full, that you can grab quickly and won't have to worry, am I going to make it back in time? Am I going to be able to use all the time? Am I going to be late? Are they not going to let me in? Pre-plan it. Bring a backpack of stuff, even in your car. I drove, even though there were some restaurants around, I was like, I don't want to rely on them. I just don't. And how many people are waiting in the same lines, same restaurants, because these are the only ones close. I didn't want to have to worry about waiting 2 hours in the evenings to get food because I was waiting for a table. So I made sure there was a mini fridge in the hotel, and I packed things that I could keep in the mini fridge and eat for breakfast, lunch, dinner. Absolutely. If you want to get it, take DoorDash or Grubhub or something.
I was going to say, you can always order a pizza. That is also, Yeah, yeah. I think that's the move most of the time. It's also
Yeah.
not the time to like try anything new when it comes to your caffeine intake. I actually have a story that I don't think I've
Oh,
told
tell
you.
me.
Oh, you're gonna die laughing because it's so on brand. I like caffeine. Like I like a good cup of coffee. I used to like it a lot more, like when I was way younger, like, end of high school, early college. But then like
Hmm.
by the end of college, like I feel like I had a normal caffeine intake. Um, and I had a routine. Okay. So then it's LSAT time. So I'm gonna go take the LSAT.
Oh,
And
no.
I was so staying in a hotel too, and I had everything planned. And I was like, because I knew I was going to get there insanely early because I just would be stressed. And there was a
Right.
Starbucks that was like sharing a parking lot with where thing is. Okay.
Oh, no.
And I go and get, and this was like in the wintertime that I was taking it. I don't know exactly when, but the peppermint mochas,
Oh,
right?
I love
Right.
those.
I love them.
Mhm.
So good. I love a peppermint chocolate flavor is my thing. And then
Yeah.
I decided to add 4 espresso shots to that.
Oh, Chelsea.
Wish I was joking. I am unfortunately not joking.
Oh,
This
my
is a real
goodness.
life, real story. And I have never told you this. And so I sat in my car and drank the entire thing, like the entire thing, because you couldn't bring
Oh,
food or
my
drink in.
goodness.
And I felt like I was like booting up, like the caffeine was like taking over my body,
Oh, my
right?
goodness.
Um, and then the LSAT, of course, is also a timed exam.
Yes.
Uh-huh. And so I'm like, I'm going. I'm doing good. I'm having a great time. I'm like, I'm so energized. I'm doing great. And I was like, oh my God, pee. Gotta go to the bathroom. And then I'm sitting there and I'm like, but the LSAT is like the 35-minute sections. I was like, because a
Yes.
5 minute out of 35-minute missing is like a significant portion. And I'm like, I am just gonna push through. No, it was traumatizing. And I was like sprinting through the hallways on our break. I mean, it was traumatic.
Oh,
So
my
I wouldn't
goodness.
suggest doing something like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great story. Horrific. I can see and feel this for you.
Right. Because it's so on brand of me, like literally being like, oh my God.
Yeah. So, but I think it's a good point is,
Yeah.
don't drink too much where you're going to really need to get up and go to the bathroom over and over
Yes.
and you're losing exam time, but don't drink too little where
You're
you
like, I'm
feel
parched.
parched the whole time. So pre-planning and a lot of
Yeah.
this is common sense of pre-plan. Make sure you have access to food or to drinks that you will like, that you will eat,
Yes.
that will make you feel the best and feel the most comfortable and confident, and stay away from the rest. And maybe you'll have a great place to eat. Maybe you won't, but plan as if you won't. Plan as if you don't have time. Make sure that you have access to food and activities. Let's talk about those activities. Try to pre-plan what you believe will help you the most for the night before both tests, right? There's the multiple
Yes.
choice one day, the written exam another, depending on your state, which is flip-flopped.
Yeah.
And do you want to go out and have a 4-course meal? Do you want to go out to fast food? Do you want to go out to a bar? Or do
Well,
you
this is the
need to do
debate.
something else? Yeah.
So I don't know your answer to this actually. So this is like from all of my experience was a hotly debated topic. So a lot of the bar prep programs will tell you to stop studying at this point, before, and they're like, no more studying, none of these things. And a lot of the conventional advice out there is to do not try and study the day before or the days of the exam, when you get out for the next section. Did you study? And what are your thoughts on that?
I did. This is the self-awareness, right?
Yeah.
I know myself. And I wanted to take that advice, but I couldn't. Now, I didn't do as much, right?
Yeah.
But what I did, and this was still a form of pre-planning, is I was like, I can't go out and eat. I can't party. I can't do the bar. I need to get to the hotel as soon as they will let me check in. I need to get in something comfy, and I need to pull out a nice book that's just fun reading, and
Yes.
I need to pull out my notes. And what I did is I had pulled the subjects that I had the hardest time with. I loved flashcards. I used a lot of flashcards when I was studying. And I put those in a little box that I brought with me that was for the things that I want to be able to have a box and say, oh my gosh, what was that? And have it at hand. Or I flagged things in my outlines, in my study materials, where it's like I really had a hard time with property. So I didn't study criminal law. I didn't need studying for criminal law, but I needed some in property, where I started panicking of, do I remember what the rule against perpetuities was? I still am not great at it. I get us by with, if you remember nothing else, remember the rule of 21. It's 21. But I wanted something to be able by my bedside to pull it up and look at it and be like, oh, okay, take a sigh of relief. Yes. That helped me more than a strict, oh my gosh, I shouldn't be studying or looking at the materials. But I kept it to a minimum of what are the things that scare me the most? What are the concepts I don't remember as well? And I gave myself access to that, and then did a cutoff of, an hour before bedtime, I'm going to stop looking at any of it unless I, wake up in the middle of the night at 2 and think about the rule of perpetuity. I at least then say, okay, now I'm going to cut off, watch my favorite show, read my favorite book, something that's relaxing in addition to that study time. Did you study?
Actually, okay, yes. And I also did on the lunch break, which is even more controversial, but I had a plan because I'm the same way. I had already decided when I got up there the day before the exam, I would not be doing any more test questions.
Yeah.
Because for me, if I was doing questions and then checking them and realize I'm getting things wrong, that would be very upsetting for me. So I didn't do any more practice questions. And I was mostly scared about the essays, which were in the afternoon of the first day for me.
Yeah.
So on the lunch break, because in the morning it's like the MPTs, which you don't really need to study for. It's sort of application in the moment.
Exactly.
So what I did, and this was my plan, I knew I was going to go back to my hotel room, and there were a couple subjects that I was less familiar with. Anyone who's watched our series will know secure transactions, wills, trust, and estates, and like family law were the ones that I was particularly concerned about. So what I did, and it was my intent to do it, is go to the lunch break and essentially look over, and I had made these already that were like 1-page sheets for each of them with basically keywords on them. Because in my mind, I was like, I might be able to explain a concept, but these are like, I know a lot of the criminal law terms more than I do the secure transactions, which I cannot even remember it now. But there were like 3 terms that were really important. I can't tell you what they are now. I can't.
But you had them on your sheet.
Yes, but they were on my sheet. And I was like, I just want to go back to the room, and I'm going to eat my food and have these 3 sheets in front of me. So they're kind of fresh in my brain.
Yeah.
And that is what I did. And that was my plan. But in between, and that I felt worked for me.
Good.
And I'm also not one of those people. This is like my rule. I've done this with every test ever of once I get to the exam center, I'm not looking at notes. That seems crazy to me.
Yeah.
I will do that up until the moment I walk out of my door. But like once I am at that exam center, I will not be looking at notes.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. And then between the first and the second day, I did not study though, because I was way too confident to be clear about the multiple choice. But for some reason, once I got through the essays, I was flying. I felt great. So I went to my hotel room and I like called you and I called my mom. And then I watched, because I couldn't really sit still to like read, which I normally love to do. So I like put on like Law and Order and then like just kind of stretched, took a bath, went to bed. But I will tell this one, thank God for having such a good support system, of when I called you the morning of the second day.
Yeah.
And I was like, I have to ask you this really important question. Like, so I am standing in the line to walk into the center. And again, I have made it my rule, I do not study. But in between the 4-second walk from the hotel lobby to the lobby of the convention center, and I'm like standing in a line to come in, it occurred to me that I had a very specific question about a hearsay.
I know. I remember that. I was about to say, as I recall, it was about hearsay, and it was.
It was such a like. It's such a very, very specific part of it that for some reason had occurred to my brain in the 4-second walk, and I was like, I don't bring my notes to the center, and so I'm like, I have nothing, but I have to call. I have to get an answer to this. And so I called you as I'm walking in. I was like, I have this very specific question.
I knew if you were calling me at that time on that day, I was like, she needs something. I was like, I have to pick up this phone. But I liked it because I did at least feel like I could do something for you on those days. And you felt comfortable enough to know, which was good pre-planning on your part, that you could pick up the phone and call somebody. You had a support system. You had a relief center. So I think we got the question worked out fairly well.
Yes.
But I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's another thing is set up, as much of pre-planning by telling people don't come and talk to me, have somebody on call. Find a teacher, a friend, somebody who's not necessarily there that you can run a question by at the last minute and who could give you a fairly decent answer or at least talk you down. Because I think that's just as important for managing stress while you're there and during the week of the exam than not. Because I remember I needed to bring a book with me to the exam. We didn't have games and stuff as much on our phones. I look 18, but I've been practicing for over 18 years. So we didn't have as much available to us to bring in. So I brought a book. A lot of people have their own electronics, but now I would make sure I had earbuds or something so that I wouldn't hear the chatter around, something where I could just focus on me, what I liked, what I found calming, whether it was music, whether it was a book. I love mysteries. So I made sure, like you're saying, you planned on, I took a bath that night. So instead of going to the bar, make sure that you're doing something that's relaxing for you. There's
I think drinking in between that isn't, I love a good drink, to be clear, but I think drinking those nights is like, no, I wouldn't. And I love to have a good glass of wine to settle down, and I would not do that.
Yeah. And, maybe one at dinner during, the 2 nights before the exams, but it's not a good time to go partying. It's not a good time to have more alcohol. And, it messes with you, just like extra caffeine. Alcohol really messes with you. So if there's a way that you can abstain, I strongly suggest it and focus on other ways of relaxing. And, having a pizza, just preparing. But I think in all of this, setting expectations for yourself and your family and friends and planning your food and activities, as well as figuring out what helps you rest and relax, whether that's having study materials or not, or going out or staying in, making those phone calls. All of this is about preparedness. Yes. What are you
I have
going
one last
to do?
Minute.
Please.
One more last minute. This is something I did that just alleviated a lot of stress. We talked about like having alarms and, you set your alarm to get up at a certain time in the morning. And like, I think that's another one of those stress dreams is that my alarm never went off. And even though I set a gazillion alarms and set one on the alarm clock in the hotel, I still had this like remaining stress that I was somehow not going to wake up. So like an insane person, I contacted my mom and then a friend who lives somewhere else. So I couldn't contact my mom and my sister because they lived in the same house and maybe their power would go out. And so it had to be 2 people in 2 separate locations and was like, I need you to call me at this time. And if I do not answer, call me until I answer. And like both of those people agreed to do it. And they were like, Chelsea, you're going to be awake. And I was like, I don't know that. You don't know that. So that gave me just an extra level of like, I'm not, even if, I don't know, all of the power went out in Baltimore, I will still be getting a phone call.
Absolutely.
To wake me up in the morning.
And I was one of those people too. I called you
you were too.
Both days. And you were already up. You were chipper. You'd already started some coffee, but it did make you feel better. And I was honestly relieved. I'm like, okay, I know that she's going to be there. I know she's up. So I also wasn't worried about you as much because you had me call ahead of time. And that was good for both of us.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, I'm not a morning person at all. At all. And I roomed with a good friend of mine. We shared a room and she was a morning person. So I was like, I know she's going to pull my butt up out of bed no matter what. And if I tell her a time, she will be mean enough to me to make me get up. And because I don't want to be stressed and I don't want my friend to be mean to me, I'm going to go ahead and get myself up.
Yes. Oh, that's so good.
But okay, so the name of the game is preparedness for the month before, the week of, and next time we're going to talk about what not to do. It's another form of preparedness of you're going to make sure before you go down there, you've got this plan. this is what to do. We're going to do what not to do. And I think that one will be a little bit funnier, honestly, as well as insightful. So join us for that and some more tips and tricks for the bar. We are on Twitter. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on, I don't know, wherever.
TikTok, YouTube.
Pinterest. Get tips and tricks from us and thelawunscripted.com. Stay tuned with us on our podcasts, on our articles. We've got some blogs. We've got our main material for sale. So check us out on that, and then like and subscribe so you can get our next podcast and see what's coming up for us, as well as the Legal Weekly Wine, which talks about the week's hottest legal topics. And right now we are in the middle of the Supreme Court summer. Supreme Court decisions are coming out. So if you're interested in that and, new constitutional law that's being created at this moment, catch us out on that, and we will catch you next time for The Law Unscripted.